Hello students, today we're going to be talking about MLA direct source quotation sandwiches. In this presentation, we'll talk about why you should quote and why we quote in academia. We're going to explore what is MLA. We're going to talk about a couple of analogies, dates, and sandwiches to help you understand quotation. Then we're going to talk about direct source quotes, and I'll have you practice some quotes, and then we'll have a classroom assessment technique, a CAT. So first of all, why do we quote? You're often asked to do quotations in college writing, and often students give me this answer as to why they have to do it. Because the instructor says so. Well, of course your instructor does tell you you have to quote, but there's reasons behind that. One, we want you to give credit to the original source. It's also very good scholarship to cite your sources because your reader might want to find out who your sources are and include that information in their own scholarship. Of course, we cite our sources and use quotes to avoid plagiarism. We allow the reader to find the source that was quoted. And most importantly, and this is really where it comes from, is to show that you as the writer have ideas from more heavyweights in academia to help support your ideas with those of their own. So in this class I'm asking you to use MLA. What is MLA? First of all, MLA stands for Modern Language Association. This is the citation style of the humanities. In that larger discipline of the humanities, there is English, literature, film, fine arts, music, all of those kinds of liberal arts that you think of. The humanities is the citation style. In this citation style, you highlight the author or the work itself, and oftentimes the page number when it's applicable. We use this citation style in English classes, one, because it's the easiest citation style, and it's also related to the discipline of writing in English. You'll also find that if you start with MLA, it's easier to understand some of the other citation styles. In MLA, because we are dealing with works of art oftentimes, the date is not as important as the creator of the particular work that you're examining. Unlike other citation styles where they highlight things like the date and downplay the actual creator or author of the text that you might integrate. So I'm going to give you a few analogies now to help you understand quotes. The first one is a date, and the other is a sandwich. So if you go on a new date with someone, you want things to go a certain way, and it's the same way with a quote. So like on a date, you want things to go smoothly when you're quoting. So imagine for a minute that a man and woman are on a date, and all of a sudden, a crazy cousin comes up and interrupts the date. All of a sudden, the crazy cousin's there, interrupting the date, and the happy date goes from happy to sad very quickly. Now imagine for a minute that this date, with the interruption, went a little bit differently. Here we are, again at the beginning, happy, having our coffee, they're close to each other, things are going quite well. And then the man says, "Oh my gosh, here comes my crazy cousin. It's going to get weird for a minute. Just don't say anything, okay? Let her do her thing." And then here comes the crazy cousin. She does her interrupting. She interrupts. She goes away. And he says, "Sorry about that. Let me tell you all about her." So in this date analogy, you notice that the couple on the date stayed happy when the other person was prepared for what was about to happen, that there was an interruption about to happen. And then the interruption happened, and then the man on the date who's was involved in the interruption allowed an opportunity to explain just what happened. That's the same thing that when you are writing. Anytime that you introduce another voice into your own writing, like someone you're going to quote from, when that person's voice comes into the writing, you have to let your reader know that that's going to happen, because all of a sudden what's going on between you and the reader is interrupted by that other person's voice. So you want to prepare your reader that someone's else is coming into the paper besides you. Then you let them do what it is that you have them in your paper doing, and then you need to explain what happened. So just like on that date. Another analogy for this is the quotation sandwich, and we're going to start with looking at the direct source quotation sandwich because it's the easiest to understand. So for a sandwich, you need a top piece of bread, you need some good stuff in the middle, and you need a bottom piece of bread. It's just like that for the quotation sandwich. Okay? Sandwiches have this structure for a reason, right? If you don't have the two pieces of bread, stuff is gushy in the middle, it doesn't work right. So just like a quotation sandwich, you need this structure. So for a quotation sandwich, you need to introduce the quote with a signal phrase. That's the top piece of bread. Then you'll give your quote, that's like the good stuff in the middle, and then you'll explain the quote. This is also sort of, when we're talking about direct versus indirect flights, it's sort of like this, okay? When I'm saying direct, I mean it's like you're going from San Diego to Chicago and there is no stop in the middle. This will become important when we talk about indirect sources in another presentation. So, with a direct source, your essay is taking the words directly from the author of the text. Okay, your quote, and you're bringing that into your student writing. That's what makes it direct. Okay, so in this case, we might begin with something like, according to Eric Schlosser, we're introducing the author. Then we're going to give the quote. Quote, the fast food industry pays the minimum wage to a higher proportion of its workers than any other industry. We've given the quote now. And then we're going to explain the quote. This means that the fast food industry is taking advantage of its employees. So you notice here that we introduced Eric Schlosser and gave a comma there before we started the quote. Then we put the quotation marks around the quote. Then we gave the page number. Since this was taken from a book, we have a page number. You'll notice that there's a space after the quotation mark and the beginning of the parentheses. You'll notice that the page number is given without any other information in there. There's no PG period or page or anything like that. There's just the number that signals to your reader that's the page it was on. You'll end the parentheses and then you'll put the period after the parentheses. It's really important that you put the period to your sentence where your sentence ends. And this sentence begins with according to Eric Schlosser and it ends after the quote. So you don't want to put the period before your parentheses. Otherwise, your next sentence would begin with parentheses 73, and that's not a good way to start a sentence. Okay, and then you would begin your new sentence with something like this means, and in They Say, I Say, they have all kinds of ways to begin explaining the quote that you have. So generally, it's really important to integrate your quotes this way because, like on your date, you want to introduce to your reader each time someone is saying something in your paper other than you. When you look in your Little Seagull Handbook, what you would be looking for this are signal phrases. And they give all kinds of different types of signal phrase suggestions for you and show you how to cite different types of sources on page 109 of that book. So, when you have a direct source, here are the things that you do want to do. You want to name your author in a signal phrase, and you want to use the signal phrase verbs that I gave you on the handout in that folder, in this citation folder on Blackboard and in Dropbox. You also want to put quotation marks around the quote. You want a space after the quotation mark. You want to begin the parenthetical reference, and then you want to include the page number and the parentheses, and then end the sentence where it ends. Okay? Some don'ts. Don't name the author in the signal phrase and in the parentheses, because that's too redundant. Also, don't use quotation marks around the parentheses. The information in the parentheses is not part of your quote. So like if you're quoting Eric Schlosser, there's no parentheses 73 in anything that he said. So that's the quotation marks indicate that that's directly taken from the person you're quoting. And then you also never want to end the sentence before it's over. The period goes after the citation, not before. Okay, so what I'd like for you to do now is go to one of the texts that we've been using for class, and I want you to find a direct source. So you're looking for a quote that is from the author of that text. And then I want you to compose a direct source quotation, a sandwich. So I want to see the introduce the quote, give the quote, and then explain it, and do that twice. You can pause this presentation while you do that exercise. Okay, now let's assess where we've been. What parts do you need for a quotation sandwich? Yes, you need to introduce the quote, give the quote, and explain it. What is a direct source? A direct source is when you quote the author of the text itself, not someone who the author is quoted, but the author himself. Like on a date, you want to integrate your source how? Smoothly. That's right. That's why we always introduce and explain. What things should you do when you're quoting? Yes, you want to be sure to introduce the author, you want to give the quote, you want to put the punctuation all in the right place, and be sure to end the sentence where your sentence ends. Now, what things should you not do when you're quoting? Yes, if you introduce your author with a signal phrase, you also do not want to put the author's name in the quotation mark or in the parentheses at the end. You don't want to end your sentence before it actually ends, etc. Okay, thank you for joining us for this presentation today. If you have any questions, feel free to email me.